Hello everyone, let's solve the Leetcode problem number 56, merge intervals. So what the question says, given an array of intervals where intervals of I equals start of I, comma end of I. So this is fair, and this one. And merge all overlapping intervals and return an array of the non-overlapping intervals that covers all the intervals in the input. So we have to return an array of the non-overlapping intervals, right? So this we have to keep in mind. Basically that covers all the intervals in the input. It has to cover all the intervals in the input as well. So example 1, they have given 1, 3, 2, 6, 8, 10 and 5, 15, 18. So the output has to be 1 and 6, 8, 10, 15 and 18. Since they have given intervals 1, 3, 2 and 6 overlap, we are merging them into 1, 6. So this one they have given 1, 6. So since it is since intervals 1 and 3 and 2 and 6 overlap, so we are merging them into 1, 6. Then 8 and 10, 15 and 18 remains same, right? Merge them into 1, 6. So similar thing, same goes with the example 2 as well. So let's try to write the code and let's try to understand by taking example 1, right? So first what I'll do, I'll come here. Let's sort the intervals based on the starting point, nothing but the first element of each interval. We are sorting the intervals based on the first element of each interval. Why we are doing this? Because this helps in merging overlapping intervals more easily. So let's sort intervals dot sort. This will be zero, right? So this is fair. Next what we will do, we will loop through the intervals starting from the second interval. Again I'm telling, we are just looping through the intervals starting from the second interval, not the first interval. We are looping through the intervals starting from the second interval. So we will start at index 1 initially, because we will compare each interval with the previous one. So we are starting at the index 1, not the index 0. So again we are looping through the interval starting from the second interval, not first interval. That is, we are starting from the index 1, not index 0, because we are comparing each interval with the previous one, right? So let me make use of the for loop. I equals 1, intervals length of the intervals. This is fair. I plus plus. So this is fine. Next what we are doing, we have to, we are destructuring the current interval into x and y, where x is start and y is end. We know how to destructure in JavaScript. This one, intervals of iterated value of the intervals, right? So here x is nothing but start and y is nothing but end. So after destructuring, what we will do, we will destructure the previous interval as well, right? So we will destructure the previous interval into previous x and previous y. So this is easy. Previous x and previous y. So this will be intervals of I minus 1. This is fair. Next what we will do, we'll check if the current interval overlaps with the previous one. So how can we check? Basically this will be true if the start of the current interval x, x is less than or equal to the end of the previous interval. Prove. Nothing but if the start of the interval, this is true if the start of the current interval x is less than or equal to the end of the previous interval, this one, previous y, right? This one, x, previous interval y, this one, x and previous y. This has to be less than or equal to, right? So the start of the current interval, x has to be less than or equal to the previous interval, previous y, nothing but this one. X has to be less than or equal to previous interval, previous y. Next, how can we write this in the code? We can just make use of the if condition, right? For this case, I'll just, if x is less than previous y, then what we will do? If they overlap, then we are merging the intervals by updating the end of previous intervals to be the maximum of the two ends, right? So this is simple. Intervals of I minus 1 into 1, this will be mat.max of y comma previous y. So this is fair. Next, what we will do, we will remove the current interval from the list. Why we are removing? It is already merged with the previous one, right? So we will remove the current interval. To remove the current interval, what we will do, we can just make use of the splice, right? So I'll just make use of the splice operation here. If you don't know the splice operation, please do Google it. And I'll just make use of intervals.splice, right? So along with the I, from I to 1, right? So next, we will decrement the index to reach the new current interval after splicing. So we'll decrement the index, right? So here what happens, 1, 3 and 2, 6 we're doing. Why we are decrementing? Basically, this will only be 1, 6. So this will be single array. One array will be eliminated completely, right? So only 1, 6, 8, 10 and 15, 18 will be there in the output. So what we have to do, we have to decrement the index to recheck the new current interval after we are splicing here. We can clearly see after splicing. So how can we write that one? Simple, right? We are just incrementing the decrementing the index, nothing but I minus minus. So finally, what we'll do, we will return the intervals, nothing but we are returning the merged intervals. We can return intervals. So let me format the code and hit the submit. So here what happened? Missing initializer. And destructuring declaration. So here I did a mistake, right? So sorry. This has to be previous x comma previous. So sorry. So now let me hit the submit again. So this is giving us time limit exceeded. So what's wrong? Let's check again. So here what I have done is this has to be here. This I missed actually. So let me format the code once and let me hit the submit again. So we are getting still the wrong answer, right? 1, 4, 4, 5. So let's check again. And here this x, if x less than or equal to previous y, it has to be. So not x, just less than previous y. So let me hit the submit again. So I hope this time this works. So yeah, this works correct, right? So then now what we'll do, we'll take the example 1 and we'll try to implement the same, right? So just give. So let's come to example 1. This example we are considering. So the intervals they have given is 1, 3, 2, 6, 8, 10, 5 and 18. So we'll come to the first step. So we will sort initially, right? So but here the intervals are already sorted, right? 1, 3, 2, 6, this one 8, 10, 15 and 18. So in this case, we know that intervals are already sorted. So no changes will occur. Let's move to the next step. So merging the intervals, nothing but this one. what we are doing in the first iteration. So we'll start from I equals 1, nothing but from here, not I equals 0, not from 1, 3. We are starting from 2, 6. This one, first iteration will be I equals 1, right? Nothing but the index 1 we are starting from, nothing but 2, 6. So here current interval, this one, current interval, I'll just take Ci. Current interval is 2, 6. So let's go a little slow itself. Current interval will be 2, 6. And what about the previous interval? Previous interval, I'll just take Pi. Previous interval will be, the current interval is 2, 6, and the previous interval will be obviously 1, 3, right? The previous interval will be 1, 3. We are starting from the first index, not 0th index. While explaining the code also, I said it correctly. So 2, 6, previous interval will be 1, 3. So we'll check for the overlap. The start of the current interval, this one, 2. We are checking whether the 2 is less than or equal to the previous interval 3. Nothing but previous y, right? Whether this 2 is less than or equal to previous y. Here, this is x and this is y. So we are checking 2 is less than or equal to previous y. Nothing but 3. 2 is obviously less than 3. So what we will do, they overlap, right? So we are merging them by updating the previous interval to 1, 6. Since 6 is greater than 3 here, 6 is greater than 3, right? So we will compare 3 and 6. First we will compare this one, whether we will check x is less than or equal to previous y. This one, yes, x is less than or equal to previous y. This is x, this is y. This is previous x and previous y, x and y. So x is less than or equal to previous y. Yes, x is less than previous y. Nothing but 2 is less than 3. So we will compare this one and this one now. 6 with 3. So which is greater? 6. So we will merge. So now we will get 1, 6. After merging, we will get 1, 6. Right? So this will be the first iteration. Now the second iteration will be I equals 2. We will come to 8, 10. Right? So the previous interval will be 1, 6. So we already got 1, 6. Now the previous iteration, previous this one, what do we call? Previous interval, right? Previous interval now is 1, 6. So of this one was current interval at the first iteration, and the previous iteration was 1, 3. Now the previous iteration, this one, previous interval says 1, 6. So we'll compare this one, 8, 10 with 1, 6. Nothing but this will be x less than or equal to previous y. 8 is less than or equal to 6. No, 8 is greater than 6. So 8 is not less than or equal to 6. 8 is greater than 6. So we are not merging. We will move to the next interval. So it remains, this one remains same. 1, 6, 8, 10. This remains same. So next we will move to the iteration 3. Nothing but 15, 18. So here again we will come. We will check x. Nothing but this one less than or equal to previous y. Nothing but 10. 15 less than or equal to 10. No, 15 is obviously greater than 10. So we will make no change. We'll make no change. So the final intervals remains 1, 6. We saw how we got 1, 6 while comparing, right? So then 1, 6 and this one 8, 10 remained same, and finally 15, 18 also remain same according to code. So just give me a second. 15, 8 also remain same according to the code. So this is it, right? So we will return the intervals, last step. Nothing but we have written, after returning we'll get this one, right? 1, 6, 8, 10, 15, 8. So the solution that we got and the output that we got here is same. 1, 6, 8, 10 and 15, 8. So this one remains same. The code works absolutely correct, right? So let me delete this one. So what will be the time complexity and the space complexity? So the time complexity would be in simple terms, the main time complexity comes from sorting the intervals, right? This one. So we know that the time complexity of the sorting would be big of n log n. So the merging process, we are also merging, right? The merging process takes big of n time complexity. So as we iterate through the intervals once, we can clearly see here, we are iterating through the intervals only once. So the time complexity would be big of n for the merging process. But for this one, the sorting takes big of n log n. So overall time complexity would be big of n log n. Why? The sorting is the dominant factor here. We know that the sorting will be the dominant factor. So the overall time complexity would be big O of n log n. I'll just give in my case big O of n log n. So what will be the space complexity? The space complexity would be big O of 1. Why? We are modifying the input array, right? And we are also not using any extra space proportional to the input side. So the space complexity would be big O of 1. Constant space. So let me format the code. Let me comment this. This is just for my reference. Let me hit the submit. So the code works absolutely fine. So this is it. Thanks for watching, guys.